So every health program you've ever tried gave you something to follow. A meal plan, a workout calendar, a list of rules with your name at the top and someone else's logic underneath. For a while it worked because someone else was doing the thinking for you. And then life happened. Plans stopped fitting and you were back where you started, except now with one more program in the graveyard behind you. Some people have a deep graveyard. That's not a discipline problem. It's a design problem. And it's built into almost every program on the market and many that I've written myself. Because dependency is a better business model than understanding, right? A plan that you can't run without me keeps you coming back. But a plan that you understand doesn't need me at all. And that's what I'm after. So that's what I've built here, the opposite kind of program. Most programs give you something to follow. The cohort, it gives you something to understand. Now, understanding sounds like a soft word for something. It isn't. Understanding is what lets you walk into a Tuesday that you didn't plan for, right? A work trip, a flare-up, a stretch of bad sleep, a holiday table, and adjust on your feet instead of waiting for next week's instructions. That's the whole game. Not perfect adherence to somebody else's system. The ability to run your own. Everything that we talk about the next 30 minutes is going to come back to one idea. And the whole 12 weeks really does come back to one idea. And that's homeostasis. Your body is not trying to look a certain way or hit a certain number. It's trying to stay in balance. Stable blood sugar, stable hormones, a nervous system that can tell the difference between a deadline and a bear attack. Every symptom that you've ever chased, right? The fatigue, the stubborn weight, the inflammation, mood swings, those are your body's honest report and feedback on how well that balance is actually holding. Once you can read that report, once you understand that feedback, you stop needing someone else to interpret it for you. That's health autonomy. And it's the entire point of what we will build together over 12 weeks. Now, I've been doing this for 20 years. Personal training, nutrition coaching, corrective exercise, track and field. I've sat across from literally thousands of people trying to fix a body that felt like it had stopped listening to them. And the pattern I kept running into wasn't laziness, and it wasn't a lack of information. If anything, most people I run into have far too much information. We're drowning, Podcasts, influencers, conflicting headlines about what to eat, contradictory advice from 3 different specialists. The problem was never a shortage of instructions. It was a shortage of a framework to make sense of those instructions. When I went to the big school I went to, Institute of Integrative Nutrition, where we're certified to be holistic health coaches, we had a problem. We had one person get up in front of us and teach us that milk was going to save your life, that it was going to cure cancer and fix ALS and get rid of dementia. And then the next day, we had someone stand up and tell us that milk was going to kill us, that humans shouldn't be drinking the milk from another animal, that it was toxic, that it caused cancer. We were confused, right? And our leader, Josh Rosenthal, he got up in front of us and said, "Hey, you're confused, aren't you?" Yeah, so are the people you're going to be working with, right? So that's what we're trying to fix here. That's what tonight is. I'm not here to sell you 12 weeks of workouts. I'm here to show you what it looks like to finally have your framework. You might be someone that milk is good for. You might be someone that milk is not good for. We have to find out. And once you have that framework, one that holds up, whether you're at home, a business trip, recovering from an injury, or navigating a season of life that you were not planning for, by the end of this talk, you'll know exactly what that framework is, how it's built week by week, and whether this is the right next step for where you are right now. But first, we need to talk about why most programs fail. Here's the pattern. And if you've done more than one program in your life, you'll recognize it immediately. You get a plan. The plan is specific, sometimes very rigid, always built around someone else's assumptions about your schedule, your stress, your history, your energy levels. You follow it hard for a few weeks. Your trainer is yelling at you to get it done. You want accountability. You get results. But then something in your life shifts. It always does. And the plan doesn't bend because it wasn't built to. You fall off. You feel like you failed. And the truth is, the plan failed you. That cycle isn't bad luck. It's the predictable outcome of handing someone a set of instructions instead of a set of principles. Instructions are brittle. Principles can flex. And I want to be specific about this because most programs fail is an easy claim to make and everyone will make it from stage. It's a much harder one to back up. So let's look at what failure really means in this context. It rarely looks like someone quitting on day one. It looks like someone doing everything right for 6, 8, 10 weeks, getting real results, and then watching those results reverse over the following year because nothing about the program transferred into a skill that they could keep using. The program succeeded at producing a temporary outcome and failed at the only thing that actually matters, building a person who no longer needs a program. So the three places that these programs typically break down, and I've written plenty of them, so I know. Number one, they treat you like a set of numbers instead of a system. You've heard it, calories in, calories out, reps and sets. None of it accounts for stress or sleep or the fact that your body is constantly adjusting for homeostasis, whether the plan acknowledges it or not. Number two, you get a script, but you don't get a manual. You can follow the steps, but you were never taught why those steps work, why in that order, right? So when the moment your circumstances change, you have no way to adapt. And number three, they ignore some of the most important things. Your relationships, your sense of purpose, your environment, your inner life. These are your primary foods. We'll get to those in a second. They shape your health as much as anything on your plate. Most programs don't even touch them. The cohort was built from the ground up to close those three gaps. We don't hand you a script. We teach you the systems underneath the script, the energy system, the movement pattern, your nutritional logic, so that 12 weeks from now, you're not waiting on me for the next assignment. You're building your own. This is also why the cohort is structured as weeks of understanding, not weeks of restriction. Restriction asks for willpower. Willpower runs out. Understanding compounds. Every week, you know a little more about how your body works, and that knowledge doesn't expire when the program ends. John C. Maxwell, a name you will hear me say often in the cohort, he's recognized as one of the preeminent speakers and thinkers on leadership and personal accountability. His teaching has been instrumental in my own development. Maxwell's law of consistency puts it simply. Motivation gets you started. Discipline keeps you going. Now, what most programs miss is the piece underneath of that. Structure, right? Infrastructure is what makes the discipline possible in the first place. When a program is built around your real life instead of an idealized version of it, discipline stops being a daily act of willpower and starts being a matter of just doing the thing that's in front of you. That's the difference between following a plan and owning your health. So a quick story on what following really costs you, following the plan. I want to make this concrete. because it's easy to nod along, right? Understanding beats following. Yes, this sounds good. But you still don't feel it. I want you to picture two people. Both handed a nutrition plan with the same goal: steady energy, less inflammation, a body that feels like it's working with them instead of against them. That's all of our goal. Person one, we'll call them Sam. Sam gets a list. I've written hundreds of them. Eat this at breakfast, eat this at lunch, eat this at dinner, avoid this entirely. For 3 weeks, it works great because the list is doing all the thinking. Then a work trip lands, or a holiday, or a stretch where none of those listed foods are available. In the list, it has nothing to say about it. There's no branch in the plan for what do I do when none of this applies. So person one, Sam, either white knuckles through discomfort or abandons the plan entirely. Calls it failure of willpower and never answers my emails again. It was never a willpower problem. It was a plan with not enough adaptability built in. Now person two, we'll call him Ben. Ben gets the processed food rating system and the color code, two tools we use in the cohort, instead of a list, instead of a meal plan. Same goal, completely different tools. Now the work trip happens, and instead of panicking over an unfamiliar menu, Ben runs it through the framework in about 10 seconds. Where does this fall? Am I missing something? What's the best version of what's in front of me? No list was ever going to survive real life. A framework doesn't also need to survive it because it was built for exactly that kind of unpredictability. That's the difference between those two approaches. And it's the difference this cohort is really built around. Now, again, thank you for coming tonight. I want to make sure I give you some value, okay, for your time. And I want to give you a real taste of what understanding instead of following looks like. So we're going to take 3 pillars that most programs oversimplify: energy, movement, and food. And we're going to spend a few minutes on each the way we'd spend a week on each once we're in the cohort. First, your energy system. Your body runs on more than one fuel system, and which one is doing the primary work at any given moment depends almost entirely on how hard you're breathing. I teach this as a gears system because gears is how it functions. First gear is easy. Conversational effort, walking, light cardio. It's the gear that builds your aerobic base because you're burning fat and teaches your body to burn fat the rest of the day more efficiently. Higher gears, right, your third gear, your fourth gear, they bring more intensity, more sugar use, and a different training effect entirely. Right. So here's the number that surprises almost everyone. 150 minutes a week in first gear is the threshold where your body shifts from building capacity to building athleticism. 150 minutes. Most people think that they're starting to get ready for a race just by doing 20 minutes. No, 150 minutes of first gear is baseline. Time in the easy zone. And most people will also skip straight to doing the hard workouts because hard feels like you've done something. And in the process, you miss the gear that was building the engine the whole time. Once you understand the gears, you stop asking, was that a good workout? Based on how sore you are or how sweaty you are. You start asking a better question. Which gear did I need today? And did I use it? That single shift changes how you train for the rest of your life. I don't do cardio. I do metabolic training because every minute spent there is deliberate and in a zone to cause a deliberate effect. Think about how much of the fitness world runs entirely backward from this. The message everywhere is push harder, sweat more, chase the soreness, because if you're sore, you know it worked. Meanwhile, the gear responsible for your baseline energy and your ability to burn fat, instead of sugar, it gets treated as the boring one, the one you skip because it doesn't feel hard enough. You don't think it counts. In this cohort, we track first gear minutes the way that most programs track calories. We're not tracking calories, by the way. That's the number that predicts how you'll feel 3 months from now, not whether or not you're sore this week. Once you know your gears, you also know your limits. That's very important, in a way that protects you. You know when a hard session is the right call, or when your body is asking for first gear instead. And that single piece of body literacy prevents the boom and bust cycle so many people live in, right? You have a great week, a hard week, and then you have a crash week. And then you have a hard week, and then you crash again, without ever understanding why the crash is happening. Now, second, we're going to talk about movement patterns, right? If you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or older, the fitness industry has mostly been talking past you. It's built around aesthetics for the young and mostly ignores the thing that determines your quality of life 20 years from now. Whether you can generate force quickly enough to catch yourself. Yes, I'm talking intensity again. That's the definition of power, and it's trainable at any age. We don't build it with high intensity, high impact plyometrics, jumping up and down. Jump training isn't the answer for this stage of life, and it's not necessary. We build it through intent, moving with deliberate speed on lower impact patterns, teaching your nervous system to fire fast even when the load is light. That's your rate of force development, and it's the difference between catching yourself on a curb or ending up on the ground. Fall prevention is not a side benefit of this training. It's the anchor that we build everything around, because if you fall, you might get injured. And if you get injured, you lose momentum. We need momentum. Here's what that looks like inside a session. Take a simple movement you already know. Right? You can do this today. A sit to stand, a step up, a push away from a wall, push away from the dinner table. Most programs have you do it slowly. Focus on control, and control does matter. But control alone doesn't train the nervous system to react quickly when your body needs to catch itself in real time. On a wet sidewalk or an uneven curb, or when your cat runs underneath your feet. That's a personal one. We take that same familiar movement and add intent. The instruction isn't just do the rep. It's do the rep like it matters right now. It's the same joint stress, but it's a completely different nervous system adaptation. This matters because the strength you build in a gym only counts if it shows up when you need it. Nobody falls in slow motion. The moment that determines whether you catch yourself or go down happens in a fraction of a second. And that fraction of a second is trainable. But only if the training accounts for speed of force, not just amount of force. That's the gap most programs for our age group miss entirely, because they either avoid intensity, right? We don't want to do anything too much. Chair yoga. Not hating on chair yoga. But we need to move faster. We need, or the opposite, we're pushing towards high impact training that isn't necessary and carries risk. And you go to 2 workouts, hurt your knee, and you think it's you. We found the middle path. It's the one that protects you. Now let's talk nutrition real quick. And I mean quick, because I could literally speak for 5 hours straight on nutrition. Some of you know that. Eat clean is not a strategy. It's a slogan. And slogans do not hold up under a real Tuesday. Instead, I teach 2 tools, many tools, but we're going to talk about 2 that you can use for the rest of your life without a single app or a point system. First, you have the PFR. I'll reference it that way. It's called the Processed Food Rating System. A simple, repeatable way to evaluate any packaged food in front of you. So the question stops being, is this good or bad? And becomes, where does this fall on my spectrum? And what am I going to pair it with to minimize damage? And then the second tool is called the color code. Again, we're not eating the rainbow. That's a slogan. The color code is a specific framework for phytonutrient diversity that tells you whether your plate is covering your basic body needs or if it just looks colorful. We put those two tools together, and you have something most nutrition plans never give you, a way to evaluate food that you haven't seen before, on a menu that you didn't plan for, without texting me first. I don't hate those texts, but if I'm not right there, I feel bad that I wasn't able to respond in real time and help you make a good choice. Instead, I'd rather give you the framework to make the good choice. So let's walk you through the PFR for a second, because the name sounds more technical than the actual tool is. Almost every packaged food you'll ever encounter can be placed somewhere on a spectrum from minimally processed to engineered for overconsumption. And once you know what to look for, the ingredient list length, the presence of certain foods that don't exist in a home kitchen, the way a product is designed to short circuit your brain, you can rate everything in about 15 seconds. Not to ban it, but to determine whether it fits in your life and whether tonight is the right night for that. The color code works the same way on the opposite side. Instead of vague instructions to eat more vegetables, it gives you a way to see whether your week is covering the range of phytonutrients that your body needs, or whether you've been eating the same 3 healthy foods on repeat and calling it balanced. Diversity, not just quantity, is the piece almost everyone misses. And it's the piece that moves the needle on inflammation and energy. Neither of these tools require an app. In fact, I'm going to send them to you tonight. Thank you for coming. They require your eyes and about 2 weeks of practice before they become automatic. That's the entire model of this cohort in miniature. Tools that you carry with you, not software that you rent. Now, none of these 3 things we just talked about, energy, movement, or nutrition, work in isolation. And this is worth sitting with for a second. This is where a lot of people fall off. You train hard in the wrong gear on a week that your color code shows nothing but beige food and poor sleep. You're not building fitness. You're stacking trauma. You're building fatigue that you're not going to feel for a couple weeks, but you feel like you're sore. It was a good workout. It's not how it works. Understand all 3 together, and they start reinforcing each other. Better fuel supports the gear work. The gear work supports recovery. Recovery supports the movement quality that builds your power. That's what a system looks like. Not 3 separate boxes to check. One integrated picture of how your body runs. Now, everything I just walked through, right? The energy, the movement, the nutrition, is what most people think health coaching is. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. And if you've done everything right on paper and still felt stuck, that's why. We start with what you can see, but we end on what you can feel. There's an important concept that I got from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition that reshaped how I coach entirely, how I look at my own life. Primary foods and secondary foods. Secondary foods are the ones you eat. Primary foods are everything else that either nourishes or depletes you. Your relationships, your sense of purpose, your career, your inner life. When primary foods are out of balance, no amount of the perfect secondary food fixes it, because your body is trying to heal and it's living through a life that is draining it. We mapped this early in the cohort using something called the Circle of Life, 12 categories of a well-lived life that we assess honestly with renegade humility. So you can see where your real leverage is, where you've got room to truly work. For some people, that is the food. For a lot of people, it's the job that's been quietly wearing you down for years, or the relationship that never gets talked about because there's always a more urgent conversation about macronutrients. They're not that important. I've watched this play out more times than I can count. Someone comes to me convinced their problem is nutritional. They've tried every diet, tracked every macro, and the scale still won't move, or the energy won't come back. We run that circle of life assessment together, and it turns out the career they're in has them in a low-grade stress response for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. No amount of perfectly portioned chicken and broccoli is going to fix that. But you can make small decisions that make a big difference. I'm not telling you to leave your job. But when we find our balance, it's not as impactful. The food was never the leverage point. It just looks like the leverage point because food is the part that everyone is trained to blame. That's why the cohort spends real time here instead of rushing past it to get to the workouts. If we skip this step, we're doing exactly what every other program does, treating the plate as the whole story. The plate's only one chapter. The circle of life shows you the rest of the book. So, it makes me think of a client, and I'm going to keep this general. I could really go into some specifics here, but I'll keep it light. Who came into me wanting help with what she described with as stubborn weight in her 50s. We ran the physical work. We did some running. We did the gears. We did the nutrition. I wrote her a meal plan, all of it. We made some real progress. Dropped 15, 20 pounds. But the breakthrough didn't happen, really, until the circle of life conversation surfaced that she hadn't taken off a real day in over 2 years. Am I describing you? Her sleep had been quietly deteriorating the entire time because she was blaming her metabolism. Once we got the sleep and the recovery addressed as seriously as the food, everything else that had felt stuck for years started moving. It took us 4 months to lose 15 to 20 pounds. She lost another 75 in the next 9. That body wasn't broken. It was exhausted. And no meal plan was ever going to fix exhaustion. It's also where one of our tools, the bookend framework, comes in. A morning and evening sequence built around 3 verbs: assess, standardize, optimize. You check in with yourself. You run a stable baseline routine, and only then do you look for what could be better. Most people skip straight to optimize and burn out, chasing marginal gains on top of a foundation that was never assessed and was never stable. Let me stay on that bookend for just a moment, because it's one of the simplest tools that I teach, and yet it's one of the most underrated. Most people's days have no real structure at the edges. They wake up and immediately check their phone. And they end the day the same way, scrolling until sleep happens, rather than deciding to happen to sleep. You don't even know where your phone is in the bed when you wake up. Bookend gives you a short, repeatable sequence at both ends of the day. Assess how you feel, standardize a handful of non-negotiable actions that don't depend on motivation, but they are yours. And then we talk about optimization. 5 minutes, morning and evening. It anchors the entire day around something more stable than however you happen to feel when you wake up. And underneath all of this lies the 5 laws. We build in depth during our muscular system work, and anchored by a phrase I want you to remember before you ever come to my cohort. Let it go. It's not a resignation. It's our rallying cry. Every law points at the same target. Release what isn't serving your goal, whether it's a habit, a belief, a version of yourself that's been running an outdated operating system. Let it go, and let the body fat go. I picked the muscular system as the backdrop for this on purpose. because muscle doesn't grow when you're lifting. It grows in the recovery afterward, when the tissue lets go of what it no longer needs and rebuilds stronger. It's not a metaphor I'm reaching for to make a point. It's literally how the tissue works. And it happens to be a near perfect description of how real behavior change also works. You don't get stronger by adding more effort, on top of more effort, on top of more effort, with no recovery. You get stronger by working hard, then releasing physically and mentally so the rebuilding can happen. Let it go is that principle applied everywhere in your life that it's needed. Change sticks when the plan accounts for the whole person. So how do we actually build this thing? 12 weeks, 3 phrases. I'll walk you through the shape of it so you know exactly what you're stepping into. Weeks 1 through 4 is the foundation. We start with an honest assessment of where you are, physically and across that circle of life. There's no workout on day 1 that matters more than this step, because every other week builds on what we find. You leave this phase with a real baseline. Your energy patterns, your movement limitations, the primary food areas that are quietly costing you the most, so we know where to go. Week 2 is built around the muscular system and the 5 laws, where let it go gets introduced as more than a phrase. It's our working tool. By the end of this phase, you're not chasing a program. You understand your own starting point well enough that everything after this feels earned instead of arbitrary. It's yours. Week 5 through 8, we're getting into systems. This is where the gears, the PFR, the color code, they get built out in full, alongside movement patterns that build real-world power and stability. Yeah, we're doing both same time. You're not just doing workouts and eating meals anymore. You're learning to read your own energy, your own hunger, your own recovery. Take that feedback and adjust in real time. This phase runs a little bit longer because it's where the real skill building happens. Think of it less like a set of workouts to complete and more like an apprenticeship in your own body. Every session teaches you something you'll use independently of me. By week 8, most people can already tell me which gear they trained in before I ask, and can look at a plate and place it on the color code without hesitating. It's not a coincidence. That's the system working. Now, weeks 9 through 12, that's where everything gets stress tested against your real life, right? Travel, stress, a bad week, a holiday, whatever your version of life happened tends to be. This is deliberate. A system you've only ever run under ideal conditions is not a system yet. It's a theory. Integration is where the theory becomes something you can trust. By the final week, the goal isn't that you followed 12 weeks of instructions perfectly, because you're not going to. It's that you could rebuild the entire system from memory if you had to, because you understand every piece of it. That's the test that I care about, far more than any single number on a scale or a tape measure or on the weight bar. Every week runs on the same rhythm, so it stops feeling like homework and starts feeling just like a rhythm that you can plan a life around. Sunday, we have a live group session. I'll give you a talk, right, that ties in with your physical homework, and then we have a guided study article that we go over. That study article you get on Monday, so you have a whole week to go over it. It's got questions for you for reflection. Monday, you get that study article along with a podcast episode to listen to in the car, right, with supporting tools. Wednesday, or whatever day works for you, is a one-on-one check-in with me. It's optional. Most people do take advantage of it, but I don't want you to feel like you have to. If this week it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. It could be a Zoom call, it could be a phone call. It's just to make sure that you're sounding in the right things and that any questions, any doubt is stripped. Because doubt kills momentum. And then on Friday, I'm sending exclusive content to your inbox, right? It'll be timely, built around whatever's relevant that week in life, or if somebody has a specific request. 4 different touch points. Same order every week for 12 weeks. Nothing in the podcast repeats the study article word for word. Everything is fresh. It's a real coaching conversation, not a recap. Now, what happens after week 12? I get this question. It's a fair one, and one I'd want answered if I were sitting where you are. Does the support just end when the cohort does? No. The tools you've built, they don't expire, and neither does access to ongoing material. In fact, I offer often for you to come back and audit the cohort a second round just to be able to take it all in again. Every week, I put out a podcast built around the same principles that we work through here. Real stories, real science, no lecture, and shorter one-off episodes whenever something worth addressing comes up in the world. Whether that's the latest headline about a new medication or a trend that needs a clear-eyed look instead of a hot take. None of that requires another 12-week commitment. It's simply there, the way a good reference book stays on the shelf long after you've read it once. Some clients come back around for that second cohort, not because that first one failed to stick, but because life handed them a new season worth building fresh structure around. New job, a new stage of health, new set of goals. It's fine too. The point was never to make you dependent on repeating this. The point is that the door stays open if you ever want to go deeper. So I do want to talk about what you will feel, learn, and build over the course of this cohort, right? First, we feel. Expect the first 2 to 3 weeks to feel like effort, because assessment always does. You're looking honestly at things you may have avoided looking at directly. Somewhere around the systems phase, most people describe a specific feeling. Things start to click instead of just getting checked off. By the integration phase, the dominant feeling isn't excitement, it's steadiness, and that's what we're looking for. You know what to do on a hard day. That knowledge itself is calming. There's also a feeling in the middle of the program that I want to name directly, because it catches people off guard. A kind of quiet frustration when you realize how much you didn't know, or how many programs you paid for in the past that didn't tell you this. And that frustration is a good sign. It means the understanding is landing. Give it a week, and it turns into something closer to relief. Now, what do you learn? Well, you'll learn how to read your energy levels using the gears, so you know which kind of effort your body needs on any given day. You'll learn how to evaluate your food using the PFR and the color code without a point system. How to train for power and stability that protects you for decades, not just the next photo. How to run a bookend routine that keeps your day anchored no matter what it throws at you, and how to identify which primary foods in your life are quietly costing you the most, using that circle of life. And by the end of 12 weeks, you'll have built a working personal system. Not a memorized meal plan, a system. That's health autonomy. That's the product. Now, this isn't a course that you sit through alone. Sessions run live, both in person and over Zoom, so distance or a busy calendar doesn't have to be the reason this waits another year. You'll be working alongside a small group of people doing this at the same time you are, which matters more than it sounds like it should. Accountability from a coach is useful, but accountability from a room full of people who are going through what you're going through and understand better, that's a different weight. And not every good program is the right program for every person. And I'd rather tell you that directly than oversell you into something that isn't the right match for you. This cohort is built for you if you're tired of programs that work only as long as you're following them exactly. If you want to understand your body well enough to make your own decisions about it, not just have instructions. And if you're willing to look honestly at more than food and exercise. You want something built for the body you have now, not the body the fitness industry markets to. And you're ready to commit 12 weeks to building a system instead of chasing a quick result. If any of those were true for you, come on in. You're going to get a lot out of this. Now, I'm also going to be candid. It's probably not the right fit for you if you're looking for a rigid meal plan and nothing more. That's a different, simpler product. And there's no shame in wanting that, but it's not this. If you need results in a week, not 12, it's not going to work. Real understanding takes the time it takes. And if you're not willing to look at anything outside of food and workouts, I've met those people. It's fine. It's not the time of that life to go after this. They'll come around. Now, if you heard that first list and felt something recognize itself inside of you, that's your answer. Trust it. And one more thing worth saying plainly. This program doesn't require you to already be in great shape, and it isn't built around punishing effort to prove you deserve results. It's built for adults with real lives, real schedules, and bodies that have earned some wear over the years. If you've been holding back from starting something because you worry you're not fit enough, or your back isn't right, or your hip's not with you, that worry does not apply here. The cohort meets you exactly where you are and builds from there. Now, I am going to do one more thing here before I open up for questions, and that is to address what I see as the most common concerns, the ones I hear the most. Right? Number one, I've tried programs before and they didn't work. That's not a reason to sit this one out. It's the exact reason this one exists. Every person who's told me that has, without exception, tried a program built on instructions rather than understanding. This isn't a bigger, harder version of the same thing you've already done. It's built on a different premise entirely. One where the goal isn't your compliance, it's your comprehension. Those are different products. Number two, 12 weeks feels like a long commitment. It's a real commitment, and I'm not going to undersell that. But compare it honestly against the alternative, which isn't 0 weeks. It's another year, or 2 or 3 of the same pattern you're already living in. Another round of starting and stalling. Another 12 months where the underlying systems never get addressed. 12 weeks of building understanding is a short time next to a lifetime of guessing. My favorite question that I was always asked on situations like this, are you going to have more time in a year? Are you going to have more time in 5 years? Is that how life works? Not from my perspective. Now, here's another one, and I think this is one of the most important. What if I fall behind the group? What if I can't keep up? What if I miss a week? This isn't a competition, and nothing about the structure rewards being the fastest person in the room. The frameworks scale to wherever you're starting from. The gears work whether your first gear is a gentle walk or a jog or running 7-minute mile pace. Yes, some people can run 7-minute miles in first gear. Not a goal we all want. The movement patterns adjust to whatever load and range you can safely work with today. What matters is that you're building your own understanding of your pace and your limits alongside with other people doing the same thing. Nobody is graded against anyone else. And if you miss a session, no worry, I send you the information anyway. If you miss 2 weeks, no worries, come back. The group wants you here and they're going to reach out. That's the group accountability. Now here's another one. I already know a lot about health and fitness. Will this teach me anything new? This is one I hear often because we all read articles and have been hit with ideas and programs and everything. It deserves a direct answer. Knowing individual facts about health is very different from having an integrated system that connects them. Most of the well-read people that I work with could quote you 5 different pieces of nutrition advice, 3 opinions on cardio versus strength, and a handful of supplement recommendations, and still can't tell you in a single sentence why their own energy crashes at 3 in the afternoon 3 days a week. I went to dinner the other night and someone wanted to ask me a question but hesitated and said out loud, I don't want to ask for free advice. I told them, the advice isn't gate kept. You could look it up online. What I offer is how to implement it. what the strategy is. And from what I've seen, that is the more valuable stuff. So I'm here not to hand you more facts, but I'm here to give you the framework that makes the facts you already have usable. You've already spent money on programs before. Some of them work for a while, but none of them were built to make themselves unnecessary. This one is. 12 weeks from now, you won't need me standing over your shoulder telling you what to eat or how to train. You'll know. That's the whole point. And that's what's on the table tonight. Think back to everything we covered. The gears, so you know how to spend your energy instead of guessing. The PFR, the color code, so any plate in front of you for the rest of your life becomes readable instead of a source of anxiety. Movement built for the body you have, aimed at the outcome that matters 20 years from now. Right? None of that is a plan I'm handing you to follow blindly for 12 weeks. It's a set of tools I'm handing you to keep permanently. Whether you're in this room, on a plane, at a table, or 20 years down the road navigating a body that's changed since tonight. That's the offer. It's not a program. It's an education. One that we honestly should have gotten in high school. 12 weeks to stop following someone else's advice. Start building your own plan. And to finally get after the life you've been hunting on your own terms. Most programs give you something to follow. The cohort gives you something to understand. So here's exactly what's on the table. The full program runs at $1,200 for the 12 weeks. Live sessions, companion podcasts, study articles, and every framework we've talked about, built out in full. That's billed monthly at $400 a month for the 3 months. There is a $300 discount if you pay in full up front. That's $900 for the whole program. And there are a limited number of founders rate spots for people who commit tonight. What we're looking for is to change people's lives. What we're looking for is for you to think differently about your own life, your own health, to speak differently, to act differently. And when you do that, you will impact 100 other people, directly or indirectly. Someone will ask you what you're doing there. Why did you pick that? Family dinner. Why are you not having dessert? Or why are you having dessert? I thought you were about fitness. And you can explain it to them. And their life changes. And that's how we make real impact. So thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm going to open this up for question and answer as soon as I figure out how to.